Hey everybody, this is Mega Matt Cat. I'm doing something special today. Just a little something I threw together. It's in regards to the recent Gamergate controversy. And I want to stay out of it, but truth is it does deal with some things I have personal concern with. And I thought that I'd, say my piece and then get back to your regular wackiness in video games. So, with that being said, let me go ahead and lay it out here. Gamergate is more or less a movement that came out of things like the Zoe Quinn fiasco, the Anita Sarkeesian fiasco, which I'll get into. And basically what it boiled down to is they sort of created this movement by accident in which games journalism and the heavier leaning, sort of leftist social justice warrior bent that it took really sort of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. To the point where an entire movement sprung out of saying, look, journalism at its core is already corrupt, we know this. But what's really bad, and what's getting even worse, is how much of a link there is between the gaming industry and the journalists who report on it. Now, there's more to it than that, but that's just part of it. Now, my part of the issue is I do have concerns about the game journalism thing, but I think enough people have spoke about that. My problem is the whole feminist side of this. As a general rule, I long ago disillusioned myself with the notion that this was a, one-sided hobby. Games are enjoyed by everybody now. My sister loves them. She plays them on her tablet all the time. I have a brother who plays them constantly. He's one of the Call of Duty guys. I myself love the solo player and story-driven games. And I don't see the sort of, disparity that a lot of people claim there is. And yes, there is some of that in the past, but it's not really the case anymore, especially if you're willing to actually look into it and research it correctly. And on that subject, that's where Anita Sarkeesian became one of the people I have a significant dislike for. Now, I haven't gone and railed against her with threats and threatened her family or any of that junk. I have, however, pointed out how flawed and incredibly poorly researched a lot of her videos are. And I just haven't done videos on it because it's not something I usually do, and I just don't have the time to add that to my list of things I'm already doing in my life. But for a general purpose, if you're interested, look up on YouTube people debunking her research. You'll find hundreds, if not thousands. Now on that subject, I did recently see a video by a guy called The Investigation Gamer or something, The Investigamer, and he made some great points that I thought would be, interesting to look into. And he'd be good to go into to, get the details. But what I want to talk about is how they are wrong as far as the feminists are concerned. There was a time when gaming was almost purely a male-dominated thing. I mean, no denying it. But that time was 20 years ago. And while it was slow to change, it did change. As you can see on the screen, this is Hyrule Warriors, and one of its strongest characters is a female, who's able to actually wield a weapon bigger than the hero's weapon, and can decimate entire hordes of enemies by herself. Yet, there's never any, real indication of her being a sex object or any of that. She's just a fighter, and a purely powerful one at that. Zelda is very much the same, as a matter of fact, as are a few of the other female characters. In fact, the only overly sexualized female character is the Great Fairy, who's one of the good guys, and that's played more for laughs. But let's move on to a different character, a character who may get the ire of a lot of those people down the line. But first, I think I should point something out here. Sheik is just an example of how, the females are, yes, they're still portrayed as beautiful and all that stuff, but they're not portrayed as weak. They're not portrayed as dependent on a man or any of that stuff. In fact, this woman consistently decimates hordes of enemies, that you can't beat on your own. So there's no denying that, she's not some wilting flower. But to be fair, that is what is. Now, that being said, this is from Nintendo, who has been a constant target of Sarkeesian's ire because of characters like Princess Peach. Who honestly, I never got that. I mean, she's been around for 20 years. If you're harking on that now, you missed the boat. But that's neither here nor there. You've also got Zelda, Lana, Midna, and a few other characters in here, all females who are powerful and impressive in their own right, with their own unique skills, personalities, and abilities. Now, this is just one example, but I could go on to cite hundreds, including from Sarkeesian's own research, such as Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, in which she completely missed the point of the story of Ico. You know, she completely failed to grasp that, which, you know, if you need me to explain why, you haven't been paying attention to her work, obviously. And that's okay. If you didn't, I don't blame you. But let's move on to this lady, Orchid. One of the premier female fighters in Killer Instinct. She's actually my all-time favorite, and is both a beautiful but unbelievably deadly character. Even more so in the new Killer Instinct. Her new fighting style, weaponry, outfit, all reflect a much more self-reliant and edgy character, rather than the flirtatious and almost over-sexualized version she had. Which, ironically, if you like that, that outfit's still available. It's just, her new outfit reflects her as a completely different person. And I like it. She is a badass, and you don't cross her. Now, that being said, Orchid dresses skimpily, but yet at the same time she's wearing grenades and special equipment and, you know, survival gear. This isn't a flirty girl, this is a warrior. So, you know, she's proof that women are not portrayed as Anita Sarkeesian and people like that would have you believe, I should say. However, here's an example even better than that. The lovely and beautiful Elizabeth from BioShock Infinite may be the perfect example of a female character who is no damsel in distress. She is actually a fighter who is in many ways a great help to you and has powers and abilities of her own that make her almost more important than you are to the story. Yet, I'm sure that Sarkeesian would come down on some cherry pick to criticize her. You know, again, this is an example of poor research being used to push an agenda. Now, I don't agree with the personal threats against her. I don't like her. I think she's a very, very poor researcher, and her opinions are flawed to a horrible degree. But let's do one last character as an example of why her point is no longer valid. Fem Shep from Mass Effect, the series. In this scene, and I'm going to shut up in a moment, you will see one of the most amazing female characterizations I've ever seen based on 2 games of activity. And I'm going to shut up for you.
I'm Commander Shepard with the Alliance. I'm here to help.
I didn't buy it from the last guy, and I've got no reason to buy it now.
The square root of 906.01 equals...
30.1.
Hello, Commander Shepard.
David, you know her?
Yes. She rescued me from Cerberus. Sent me here. She made it quiet.
You did a great job keeping yourself safe. The biotic students are up there. Stay close. They'll get you out of here.
Okay. Thanks.
He looks better.
I remember you. Normandy crew. Sorry.
It was never your fault.
Has Grissom Academy been alright?
Yes. I've been counting.
Anything in particular?
The number of days you lengthened my life. The security office. I hacked the lock. Guns. Lots of guns. Goodbye.
See, that's what I'm talking about. This is the type of thing that shows that any argument about this, about the over-sexualization of women in video games, of their mistreatment, falls apart when you actually look beyond cherry-picking. I mean, that got me, you know, as it shows, it got me right in the feels. I mean, dead on right in the feels. And to be truthful, some of the best characters in games are females. Diablo 3, one of its best characters is its female barbarian, as well as its female demon hunter. You can play as a male, yes, but the female is the most interesting version of that character, even though the dialogue is mostly the same. It's an interesting take that this character, a woman who is, both amazingly intimidating and beautiful, is an extremely interesting character. Same with the female witch doctor, by the way. But my point is, this is one of the biggest failures of that argument. It's the assumption that just because Peach has always been the, eternally kidnapped princess, that is the bulk of the video game industry. And that's not true anymore. And that's the problem with someone like Sarkeesian. Her complete inability to look beyond, the outliers shows why she's a failure as a researcher and in general with her feminist frequency and her tropes versus women. The reason so many people were able to debunk her is because she cannot do research to prove her point without cherry-picking the most extreme examples, because the moment you go beyond those, your argument falls apart, and she knows it. And that's simply truth. So, the question then becomes, what else has Gamergate become? And what it really is boiled down to is that Gamergate more or less has become a sort of, general dumping ground for all kinds of game-related anger and hate and rage and, distrust. It was supposed to be about, the problems with game journalism. And it also spread to the whole feminist thing, and then there was the threats and all that kind of stuff. But when you boil it down to its core, what Gamersgate should represent is the idea that we should call out people who fail to do their job correctly, be it in journalism, with Anir Sarkeesian, with other feminists. We should call out bullshit. We should call out lies. We should call out deception. We should call out all of those things. Because at the end of the day, all they are is people pushing an agenda. They're not seeking truth. They're not looking for reality. They're pushing an agenda. And that's it. That's all. And we should unite against this, because when people push agendas, things go bad. You need evidence? Look at the news industry outside of gaming. How hyper-partisan it has become. I will admit to a lot of things. I'm a conservative by nature, although mostly economically. Foreign policy, that kind of stuff. When it comes to the social issues, I'm much more easygoing about it. Truth of the matter is I'm a live and let live kind of guy in that regard. But Fox is undeniably a hard right-wing, group. They try to be fair, but that doesn't always happen. By the same token, MSNBC, CNN, they don't even try to be fair. They are just partisan hacks at their core, and they have been for a long time. NPR, same problem. It really is sort of, the state of the industry now that, a certain subsection of the media is essentially just a mouthpiece for whatever administration is in charge. But at the end of the day, the games industry and game journalism as a whole is following the same path. It's becoming too chummy with the corporate overlords, as it were, and I feel that at times that does a disservice to gamers as a whole when overhyped games become far too popular, far too, overhyped and underdelivered. And, it just could point to Pierre Molyneux, point to Destiny, take your pick, there's plenty to go around. Or point to EA, and there you go. But that is not the game's fault. It's an industry that overhypes everything to try and conceal its own failures, its own flaws, rather than owning up to them and trying to fix them. And Gamersgate should be about that. It should be about fixing the industry's flaws rather than letting them cover it up. So in closing, I guess what I'm trying to say is Gamersgate has gotten a lot of flack and a lot of support from both sides. There's been some good and there's been some bad. At the end of the day, we should try and focus Gamersgate. make it something that we can use as a force for good. Focus it on, you know, blocking out and, stopping the corruption of games journalism, shutting down frauds and fakes like Aeneas Sarkeesian. It's all well and good to argue about the problems that have been in the game industry, but if you're going to do it honestly. Do your research, do your work. Otherwise, you're just doing a disservice to yourself, your viewers, and you're doing a disservice to the industry as a whole. The same goes for the game industry. Stop overhyping games. Give us the truth. Give us the facts. If you're going to sell a game on its merits, sell it on its merits, not on hype. It's like Hyrule Warriors is a great example of this. They sold that game on its merits purely. And I bought it for its merits purely, and I love it. And I am still playing it, based purely on the merits of the game itself. I saw the previews, I watched the videos, I knew what I was getting into. I'm a big fan of Dynasty Warriors, which, if you've seen my channel, you know this. So for me, a Zelda-themed Dynasty Warriors, yeah, I was on board. But I made sure to play the game, to study it, to see as much of it as I could so I understood what was actually going on. Not just the hype surrounding it, but the truth behind it. And I bought it and enjoy it for its own merits. On the other hand, I did play Destiny. I do own Destiny. And I've played it and enjoyed it to a certain extent, but I see the flaws. Which, thankfully, they're actually now trying to fix. But that's just another point. If you knew those flaws were there to begin with, or if you didn't do enough testing to discover them from the get-go, you just did a disservice to your entire fan base, as it were, to the entire purchaser base. Because now, you've more or less soiled your good name because you deceived and lied to the people who play your game. And I could point out stuff like, Call of Duty having the same problem, but truth be told, with Call of Duty, by now you know what you're getting into. But it's stuff like this that, makes me unwilling to get involved in a lot of the stuff that's happened in the industry. The focus on multiplayer, the explosion of mobile games. I admit to playing some mobile games, but most of the games I play are just simple little time wasters that I can kill time with. When I actually want to get down and really play a game, I'm using my consoles or I'm using my PC, my MSI Dragon. Truth be told, I like the industry. I think that it does great things, and I think there's some real potential with the new technologies. I feel we're not using it right. And I feel that part of the problem is that the explosion of mobile gaming has sort of kicked the legs out of the industry when they least expected it, particularly for Nintendo, but for everybody in general. Yet at the end of the day, it's still up to us, not only as gamers, but as an industry, which I am not actually part of directly, but I do follow it quite heavily. I have to say, we need to fix our own problems. We need to clean up our own house. The vitriol, the toxicity. Many of the companies are now working to try and suppress or control that, and I think that's a good thing. But we have to fix that ourselves by dealing with the people who spread such toxicity ourselves. Shut them down, report them, close them out or mute them, or in general just, don't play with them. And I think you see that now where a lot of the worst offenders are being ostracized, but it's not enough. We also need to fix the gaming industry in terms of, overhyping and under-delivering. We need to, there are certain major offenders like EA who are, abusing their customers with DLC and, pre-order passes and all this other crap. Nintendo's now starting to join the party, although admittedly they're being a lot more fair about it than others. I think that's, it's clear that they are trying to get in on it, but they also want to make it worth your while, as opposed to, say, The Sims 4 shipping with, 40 to 50% of the content from Sims 3 missing. Now, EA, thankfully, is trying to make up for that by adding it back in free of charge. But that still begs the question, you know, when is it that we're going to hear the next major EA kerfuffle? You know, when are we going to see some website giving a massively, you know, high score to a game they released that turns out to be absolute dog crap? Because EA, of course, is one of their biggest, you know, advertisers, and they can't offend them. Is it going to be Jeff Gershman all over again? In the modern era, in the era of YouTube, it's time we accept that we can actually make, you know, progress ourselves, that we can apply the pressure to make change. And I think that when you really boil it down, we should be willing to accept that. We should be willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going to take your crap anymore. You're either going to treat us like customers and you're going to treat us like people, or we're going to take our money elsewhere. And I'm trying very hard to support games I believe in and avoid games I disagree with. You know, at times it is difficult, and I will admit that. But it's something we should start doing before, you know, we start whining and complaining again. We should start saying, you know what, let's not whine and complain, let's act, let's do better. Okay, well, this video wound up going a little bit longer than I intended, but fair's fair. This is a subject that I am following, but I don't expect I'll be doing another video on anytime soon. I'm going to just continue with other projects I'm working on. In fact, now that it's October, I need to start doing some recording for a project I want to do before the end of October, or that I'd like to start, at least have the first video out by Halloween. So I'm going to be working on that. And then later this year, with Gundam Breaker coming out, I'm also going to try and wrap up my playthrough on that, so I can get that out before the next one comes out and takes up all my life. So, I will leave it there for today, and hopefully this video has been at least somewhat entertaining and maybe educational. If you have comments, or if you have something you'd like to suggest, or if you have requests for games I should be playing, let me know and I'll try. But beyond that, I would say your best bet right now, if you're interested in Gamergate, is to hit up YouTube and Google and start doing searches. There's plenty of info out there, but you have to be careful to sort it, because some of it's authentic and some of it's just, you know, more corporate dervish and garbage. And you know, to find the truth, I hit up at least a dozen different websites, dozens of different articles, watched several different YouTube videos on the subject. I'm familiar with a lot of different work in this industry, so, you know, at this point, yeah, I think it's time that we as gamers step up and say, you know what, enough. But that's just my opinion, and, you know, I understand if people disagree, but if you're going to disagree, at least do it respectfully. Otherwise, that's it for today. I'll be hopefully releasing more videos next week. I'm going to be trying to wrap up the Gundam Breaker and then moving on to another project. Still waiting to see if anybody's interested for Hyrule Warriors, but if not, no biggie. I'm having too much fun as it is. Anyway, I will see you all next time. If you have anything else that you'd like me to try, let me know. Otherwise, this is the Mega Mac Cat, and I'll see you next time. Night, folks.